Hey guys, welcome to You Fix It Garage. In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the front coil springs on a Workhorse P series chassis. All right, I want to go over the tools you're going to need for this job. It's not a lot of them, but there are a couple specialty tools that you need to have. And this is a pretty greasy job, so once you get started, you're not going to want to have to stop to go get tools. I'm going to be using this DeWalt 1/2-inch impact. If you don't have one of these and you own an RV and you plan to continue doing maintenance on your own RV, highly suggest you get one. These things make life so much easier, especially on a job like this where we're dealing with some pretty big nuts that we've got to take off. So moving on from here, like I said, I'm going to be using an impact. So I've got a set of impact sockets. You're going to need 1 1/4 inch, a 1 inch, a 3/4, and an 11/16 impact socket. Or if you don't have an impact and you're going to use a regular, you're going to need those big sockets and a good socket set. So I've got just a regular socket wrench here with a 3/4 and 11/16. I've got a 5/8 and a 3/4 end wrench. Just this little knuckle right here so I can get into that angle on that ball joint. You're going to need a pair of needle nose pliers and maybe a little smaller pair of pliers or a bigger pair of pliers for the carter pins to pull them out with. Up here I've got a breaker bar. You're going to use this to take your lug nuts off if you don't have the impact, or you may use it once we get to that big nut on the A-arm. And then coming on across here, you're going to need these are called ball joint forks or pickle forks, ball joint separators. You're going to need a set of these. I got these from AutoZone's tool loaner program. Doesn't cost you anything. You can go up there. If they've got it, you pay a deposit on the tool, which is pretty much the full price of the tool. Then when you bring it back, they refund all your money. So it's a great program at AutoZone. I highly suggest you utilize it if you can, because this is kind of a one-off project. The next thing you're going to need is a big hammer to drive those out with. And then finally, some type of jack. I'm using a 3-ton floor jack, but you can use a bottle jack or any other type of jack. You're going to start out by lifting up the front of your RV. If you're not sure how to do that, just click the little link right up there. And I've got a video on how to lift the front of your RV. It's not too hard to do. But once you get it lifted and supported, you're going to want to support underneath the middle, the frame section, and pull your front tire off. Once you have that tire and wheel off, the next thing that has to come loose is this control arm right here. And that is held on by a 15/16 nut, and it has an Allen key. Not an Allen key, it has a carter pin in it. So you're going to need a pair of pliers to pull that carter pin, and then it's a 15/16 nut. All right, once you get that nut off, then the next thing is going to be to take your ball joint fork, and what's got to happen is in order to separate this fork goes in between the ball joint, and you drive it with a hammer, and that's going to separate the ball joint. Shouldn't be super difficult, so if you run into major problems, don't get crazy with the hammer. Now, once this is out, you can just flip it up out of the way. Maybe tie it off with a zip tie or something so it doesn't hit you in the head. With the control arm removed, now you can take the end of your hub, spin it forward, rotate it forward, I guess I should say. And then on the back side, back here, there is a nut, and again, it's got a carter pin in it. So we're going to take that carter pin out, and then this nut has to come off. That is 1 1/8 inch nut. Okay, so with this, once the nut is loose, you want to put it back on and thread it down so that the threads are fully engaged. The top of the bolt is sticking out because this spring is still holding a lot of tension right here, And once we take the shock loose and take the sway bar loose, this nut is the only thing that is keeping this spring captured. Before I take anything else loose, I'm going to put my jack underneath the bottom of that A-arm. And if you look, try and get where you can see it here, there's a grease cert on the bottom of this A-arm right there. You don't want to squash that grease cert. So be careful when you put your jack or where you position it. You want your jack positioned in such a way that it's not going to slide. It's going to support the weight and not slide out from underneath there whenever you take everything loose. That's got that supported, the jack's locked in, and now the next thing that I'm going to do is take that shock loose. All right, the lower portion of the shock, that's 3/4 inch nut and bolt, and that's not 3/4. All right, 3/4 inch nut and bolt. I'm having a little bit of trouble. Actually, I'm having a lot of trouble getting this bolt out of the lower part of the shock. And I'm replacing my shocks anyway, so I just went ahead and took the upper loose. And once I get this spring out of here, then I'll take a punch and I'll drive that bolt out. I just can't get to it with the spring in the way. So back to this, the next thing that's got to come loose is that sway bar. The sway bar, it's 3/4 inch on the top of the bolt, and the nut on the bottom is 11/16. All right, up underneath this sway bar, there's 2 nuts. So once you get the first one off, you're not done. You got to get that second one off also. There's 2 nuts on each bolt, I should say. And then once you get those off, all right, I've got the shock disconnected, I've got the sway bar disconnected, the control arm is disconnected, and the nut up here on the top of the ball joint for the lower part of the A-arm is loose. So the next thing that I need to do is separate this ball joint right here. We're gonna have to lower a little bit of tension off the jack, but again, I've still got the nut right here capturing that spring. So I'm gonna lower the jack down just a little bit. So hopefully you can see this. What I'm trying to do is get this in between so that I don't mess up the boot that's on that ball joint. I'm just tapping, not getting crazy with it. And there you saw the spring. See the tension that is on that spring, and that's why you want to leave that nut on there, because that spring will jump out at you and it can hurt you. Okay, so that's separated. I'm going to come up with my jack, take some pressure off of that nut. Okay, so now the only thing holding that spring in there is the tension of your jack. So you want to kind of get yourself back out of the way over here. I'm positioning myself so that if that spring comes loose, it's not going to jump out at me. And I'm going to very slowly release tension on this jack. And once enough tension is off of that jack, that spring can come out. And that's what there is to it, to getting the spring out. Even though I was careful trying to take these ball joints loose, I ended up tearing the ball joint. You can see right there and right there where the pickle fork went in, and I tore the boot on both ball joints. And these factory ball joints, I guess these are factory ball joints, it's not a replaceable boot, and I couldn't really find, I'm sure there's some aftermarket replacements that would fit it. But what I'm gonna do is just go ahead and replace the ball joints. I ordered these from Super Steer, and they come with a new boot, and it's a brand new ball joint. It is a MOG brand ball joint, and the part number is K6511 if you ever need them. So I'll be replacing both my ball joints. If you want to see how that's done, click the link and I'll post up a video of the ball joint replacement. The new coil spring, get your jack positioned underneath your A-arm and then position your new coil spring in place. These coil springs have a flat spot on one end. This is the bottom. This goes on the lower A-arm, and then the top is kind of coiled and it goes up in the top. Now, all right, I'm hoping you can see this. You can see right here where the old coil spring sat, and there's actually an indentation right here in the back, and that's where that flat piece of spring goes, and the end of it goes right there. That'll get your spring timed correctly. With your jack positioned in place and your spring properly timed, then you need to start lifting the A-arm. All right, guys, normally I would skip over this and just show it assembled without showing the finer details here, but I wanted to demonstrate that this is a process you can do yourself. These parts are big and heavy, and they require a little bit of muscle to get them moved around, but this is absolutely a process that you can do on your own. And so right here, all I'm doing is I'm lifting the A-arm slowly, and I'm trying to get that ball joint lined up with the steering knuckle there and back up in the hole so that I can put the nut back on it and get that cotter pin in there. You'll help yourself out a lot if, as you're putting this together, you try and time this cotter pin hole so that it's sideways and not pointing towards the steering knuckle. And the next thing is this nut goes on, and according to the manufacturer of the ball joint, this gets torqued between 75 and 90 foot-pounds. So you start at 75 and then you work your way up, and what you're trying to do is time it so that one of these slots lines up with that cotter pin hole. All right, so the way I secure a cotter pin, and this is the way I was taught in the military doing helicopter repair, everything is safety wired and cotter pinned on them, is to insert the cotter pin all the way. One leg of it gets bent back up over the bolt halfway across the top and cut off. The other leg gets cut off and pushed down on the outside of the nut. All right, I want to show you what I did so that you don't make the same mistake. So I got the A-arm lifted up and that knuckle put back in. But what I didn't do is I didn't lift my sway bar up above the arm before I lifted the arm up. So now my sway bar is trapped down here, so I'm gonna have to take the sway bar loose right there to get it up on top of the A-arm. So save yourself that step. Make sure your sway bar is up there before you lift that A-arm. Okay, I've got the A-arm connected. I got it connected back up there where I had to take it loose. And the next thing is I am gonna be installing a new set of Coney shocks on. So I'm gonna get the shocks put on, and then we'll connect that steering arm. All right, I got the new shock put in place, and I came over here and I attached this control arm and I torqued it down. I started at 60 foot-pounds, and I had to go a little heavier to get the cotter pin to line up. And so now you want to make darn sure that you put the cotter pins back in the end of your control arm and also in the steering knuckle right there. Those hold these nuts on, and if these nuts come off, you lose steering. Actually, okay guys, before you put your wheel and tire on, do one final check. Make sure that your shock is attached and torqued at the top and at the bottom. Make sure that you've got your control arm put on here, and the nut is on and torqued, and it's got a cotter pin in it. Make sure that your nut on your steering knuckle is on and torqued, and that you've got a cotter pin in it. Double check the nuts on your sway control. Make sure that they are good and snugged down and a tight fit. And then double check that spring and make sure that it didn't slip out of place. All right, that should have everything. Now's a good time to go ahead and grease everything underneath here before you put your wheel and tire back on. And in one of my next videos, I'm going to be installing this Safety Plus steering stabilizer in place of the old steering stabilizer that I've got underneath here. And so I'm going to let you know if that's worth $500 for an upgrade. Thank you guys for watching. As always, it's my goal to save you money by helping you do things yourself. If I have, please like and subscribe. Consider checking out some of the other videos that I have linked here, or look in the description for links to products that I've used in some of my videos. You guys have a great day and be safe on the road out there.